All right, today we are diving into a really cool story about an AI that got incredibly good at a super complex medical task by training on something that isn't even real, fake brains. Now, I know, that sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? But this bizarre idea actually solved a problem in neuroscience that's been around for decades, and we're going to break down exactly how.
So what is this task? Well, it's a process called skull stripping. And yeah, it kind of begs the question, why on earth would you need to digitally remove the skull from a brain scan in the first place? Well, here's why. A raw MRI scan, like the one on the left, it captures everything, the skull, skin, eyes, you name it. But for pretty much any kind of brain analysis, researchers only want to see the brain itself. So this digital cleanup, going from the full head scan to that perfectly isolated brain on the right, is an absolutely critical first step.
So let's quickly get into what this process is all about and why it's so foundational to brain science.
The easiest way to think about it is like digitally peeling an orange to get to the fruit inside. The software has to be smart enough to ignore all the extra stuff, the skull, the muscle, the fat, and just focus on the brain tissue. It sounds simple enough, but trust me, getting it right is deceptively difficult.
And the stakes here, they're incredibly high. This isn't just some trivial tidying up. Getting skull stripping right is absolutely essential for accurately tracking diseases like Alzheimer's, for comparing brain structures across huge populations, and even for anonymizing data to protect patient privacy. You get this first step wrong, and every single analysis that comes after it could be completely worthless.
Which brings us right to the heart of our story. See, for decades, the tools that were built to do this one job, well, they had a major flaw.
Honestly, the best analogy is that they've been like extremely picky eaters. You know the type. They'll only eat, or in this case, process, one very specific kind of meal, and they just turn their nose up at absolutely everything else.
So what does that mean in the real world? It means that most of these tools are designed for one thing: perfect, high-resolution MRI scans from healthy adults, the kind you get in a controlled research lab. But the moment you show them messy, real-world clinical scans, or scans from infants, or even different types of scans, they just fall apart. And these failures aren't small, they can be catastrophic.
And it's really interesting to see how they fail. Let's look at a few examples. Some tools are way too cautious. They end up leaving bits of the skull or other tissue stuck to the brain.
Then you've got other tools that swing in the complete opposite direction. They get confused and start grabbing huge chunks of the face, neck, and jaw, which, as you can imagine, completely throws off any analysis.
But this is the absolute worst-case scenario. Some tools are so aggressive, they actually start chipping away at the brain itself, literally deleting critical brain tissue by mistake. This is the kind of error that can completely invalidate an entire research study. So yeah, we desperately needed a better way.
And that's where this story takes a very weird but totally brilliant turn. Instead of trying to build a better picky eater, researchers decided to create something that could eat, well, literally anything.
They asked a completely radical question. What if, to build the perfect tool for real-world brain scans, you never showed the AI a single real brain while you were training it? It sounds completely backwards, right?
So here's how they did it. They started with a few really good anatomical maps of a head. Then they just went wild. They used software to stretch, twist, and warp the anatomy into all these bizarre, unrealistic shapes. They gave every tissue random, impossible textures and colors, and then, to top it all off, they threw in all sorts of digital noise and blur. And this slide just shows it perfectly. These are the kinds of absolutely bizarre images that the AI, which they called Synthstrip, was trained on. I mean, they look nothing like a real scan, but that's the whole secret. By learning from this insane variety of impossible brains, the AI was forced to understand the fundamental, deep-down properties of a brain, no matter how weird it looked. It learned to generalize like nothing before it.
So, after all that bizarre training, the big question is, how did it actually do when it saw real-world data for the first time?
The result was, frankly, a breakthrough. They had created a single, universal model that could accurately skull strip pretty much any type of brain image you could throw at it, from any machine, from any patient.
Just take a look at this. It works perfectly on these notoriously tricky infant brain scans, which have totally different contrasts and shapes than adult brains. And get this, it even works on completely different kinds of medical images, like this CT scan, which it had never ever seen a real example of before its training. And here it is again on a PET scan, another totally different imaging method. It's because it was trained on such utter chaos
that the real world, in all its messy variety, actually looks simple in comparison.
And you can really see the difference laid out here. Across the board, from standard MRIs to messy clinical data, infant brains, and even other scan types, Synthstrip is just excellent. Meanwhile, those older, picky eater tools, they range from kinda working okay to just outright catastrophic failure on anything challenging.
So, okay, this is a really cool technical achievement, but what's the real-world impact? Why should we really care about this?
This matters a lot because it unlocks these huge archives of clinical data that were just too messy to analyze automatically before. It means researchers can now run massive studies across really diverse groups of people with way more confidence. It improves our ability to track subtle brain changes in diseases like Alzheimer's. And maybe most importantly, it's this powerful proof that sometimes the best way to understand reality is to train an AI on pure fantasy.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to ponder. If an AI can master the incredible complexities of the human brain using only fake images, what other massive, real-world problems are just waiting out there to be solved by embracing the synthetic?